Hi, it's Jan Beta, and I've decided to call it quits on trying to upgrade this Atari 65XE to 320 kilobytes of RAM. I made several videos about this and didn't figure out why this wouldn't fully work. So I decided at this point it makes more sense to just undo the modification and mod this to be a 128 kilobyte machine. So it is going to be technically a 130XE. And with the modifications I already made, this should be super easy to do. So this is where we're at. This Atari 65XE now is modded with several things. It has a non-working 320K expansion in there, and it has the new DecentXE keyboard in place that I made a video about. And the RAM expansion I made 3 videos about, I think, and I did a lot of troubleshooting off camera and I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't quite work. There are several things that I could try still, but I'm kind of fed up with trying to get this to work. And it doesn't really make sense to do this. I just thought it would be a nice, inexpensive way to upgrade this to a machine that can play like the latest demos and things. But on the other hand, in the meantime, there are expansions that expand this to even more memory, some of which, like the AVG card, average card, and the sub card, just plug into the cartridge slot and just make this a fully upgraded machine with, I think, up to 4 megabytes of RAM. And there's an internal expansion that brings this up to 1 megabyte of RAM, the ultimate 1 megabyte upgrade. So the 320K upgrade is a good idea and it should work for pretty much everybody else that I talked to, but it didn't work for this particular machine that I have. For whatever reason, I couldn't figure it out. And I just decided to remove the expansion and upgrade this to be a 130XE instead, which kind of makes more sense. And then I'm probably going to go forward upgrading this with one of the modern upgrades, and hopefully that is going to work. So yeah, we're going to open this up, remove the mods, and I'm going to show you how the 130XE conversion is done. And as I said, this is going to be relatively easy because I already socketed all the RAM and made some other modifications. I think my function keys just fell out from the new keyboard because they're not very solid in the keys there. Going to have to find a workaround for that. Probably just some tape. So yeah, I'm going to take this fully apart and then we're going to take a look. One thing I did after the DecentXE keyboard build is to add a piece of cardboard to the back of the keyboard because the contacts kept shorting out against the shielding here. That's a good way to prevent that. And yeah, if I get this to work, I'm going to start thinking about the optical refurb of this, which is very much overdue, but I didn't do it because I wanted some kind of memory expansion to work in this thing. That's why this still looks so rusty. And the case is super dirty still, because I didn't even clean it, really. Just a quick wipe. So this just clips in with these twisted tabs here, the shielding. And I think I can kind of get rid of this altogether. Not really needed functionally these days. So there's the circuit board. Let me take a couple of seconds to thank the sponsor for this video, PCBWay, my favorite manufacturer of prototype PCBs of all kinds. They can also do 3D printing, CNC machining, sheet metal fabrication, basically everything the modern tinkerer needs. Their pricing is super reasonable, delivery is fast, the quality is excellent, so I highly recommend checking out the link in the video description. Let's go back to the Atari. So here's what I did. This is the 320K mod that doesn't really work. It works sometimes and to some extent, but as I said, I just decided to remove it. What we're going to have to do to undo this is to remove the wires plug this thing back into its socket fully, we are going to program another GAL chip. This here, which I added for this mod, has to be in there for the 130XE mod as well. So we need a 74LS95B in this position here. We are going to replace the RAM I added with 4164 RAM chips. So these original ones are 4164 or derivatives. And we're going to put another row of 8 4164 chips here, totaling 128K of memory. I am going to remove the wiring that I did on the backside here as well. I connected all the pins on the extra RAM to make them compatible. And yeah, that's all going to have to go. And then we should technically probably have a 128K machine here after I remove everything. So let's do that. Just going to undo my doings here. This kind of hurts, of course. But yeah, as I said, this doesn't work reliably and I don't want a non-reliable 320K expansion in my machine here. Want something that works, and hopefully we can at least make this a 128K machine. So this is gone. Little resistor that I added to the back of the PIA. The GAL chip, I'm going to replace it with a new GAL chip because I have plenty of those that I bought for this very expansion. In case some of them don't work. These are programmable logic chips and you can reprogram them I think 100 times or thereabouts. So could in theory use this one, but it has the bent pins, so not really going to bother with that, I think. So these are loose. It actually feels kind of relieving to remove this. I spent a lot of time with this and yeah, it still didn't do what I wanted. We have a problem with this one here because I cut the pin, I think. I'm just going to solder on a new pin, I think, and see if I can make contact with the socket here. This one has to go. The mod that I'm going to do obviously only works on Atari 65XE boards that are the same board like the 130XE. I think there's at least 2 different versions of these that were used in both machines. One has less RAM chips, and I think there's mods for that one as well. This one I think is a bit more common with the 16 RAM chips, and for the 130XE this is the exact same board. The 130XE, the original, only has one eMMU chip in here and it doesn't have the 74LS95. There's also a way to simulate this original chip so you don't need the logic chip, which I think is the most difficult part to source. These are no longer made for quite a while now and they can get a bit expensive, but I bought some for the 320K mod, so I have a couple of these. This original chip is also basically unobtainium. There's a smaller version of this that also uses the 74LS95. The one they used in the Atari 130XE, I think to cost reduce the model, is one that doesn't require this extra logic chip that has that logic integrated. But we are going to go with the GAL 16V8 and the logic chip and the RAM. And of course, if you are doing this to the 65XE, the 65XE isn't going to have these little capacitors here, which are just 100 nanofarad capacitors, like on this row of RAM, and you're also not going to have sockets. So you're going to have to free the vias on these positions here. This will have some jumper resistors soldered in that you're going to have to remove, and this is not going to be populated, so we need a socket here, sockets for the RAM and the little capacitors to do this mod. And this one won't have the leg bent and you don't have to desolder this for the 130XE mod. So yeah, let's find a workaround for that. I think I just want to solder on some lag there. That probably makes sense to do that while it's in place. Probably makes things easier. Just the component lag should do. We just need to make contact with the socket there. And just using the lag from this capacitor here should be relatively easy to do. Soldering this on straight to this. There we go. Then I'm just going to cut it to size. Something like this. Just removing this chip altogether and bending this down carefully so it matches the other pins. I'm going to shorten it to exactly the length of the other pins here. And then this shall go back into its socket, and it should fit perfectly with the leg in there. Yep, that should do. Okay, first step is done. Remove the RAM. That's an important one, because this is 6256, 4256, or whatever you want to call it. There are different part numbers for these. This is, of course, more RAM than we need. And we could technically use these, I think, by shorting some pins, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use the proper ones for this purpose. 4164. I should have plenty of those from my C64 repairs. Let me just double check if my chip makes contact with the board. Yep, looking good. Yeah, I found a lot of RAM. I'm not sure if the RAM chips I chose are going to work for this purpose, but we're going to find that out. So these are Sanjo. These are LM3364K. So they should be compatible with the 4164 RAM completely. So I'm just going to put 8 of these in there. I'm wearing my ESD wrist strap here because RAM chips are pretty sensitive to electrostatical discharge. And so are many of the other elderly chips on here, of course. Not taking any risks in that regard. Also, the work surface here is connected to ground through a resistor. So we're going to have to connect pin 12 on the GAL chip, which is going to go here, to ground to make this a permanent 120K mod. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And it's this one on the other side. So this one has to go to ground. And I think the other side is just ground. We're going to verify that. This should be ground. Yep. So these 2 pins here, 3 pins are all ground. So we can just run a wire to one of these pins. So we probably just bridge this to there. So you can make this switchable, but I don't really see why we would do that because the 130XE is pretty compatible. You can tie this to ground for 130XE compatibility, and you can tie this to 5 volts or VCC for 64 kilobytes, so making this a stock 65XE Atari. But I'm just going to solder it permanently to ground, so we're going to have a 130XE basically. I think I can just use one of my wires from the previous mod to do that. We're just going to solder one wire just across here. So that should be connected, I guess. Yep, and it's not connected to any of the adjacent pins. That's good. So that should be our switch set to 130XE. Now we have to program the GAL chip. And for that purpose, we are going to download the JEDEC file. That is the file or the logic table needed to program the 16V8 GAL. And this is a mirror of an ancient Atari site from Jindrouge. Jindrouge? Pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. Yeah, this is the JEDEC file that I think Christopher Lang originally created, but that's still the one that's state of the art because, of course, the hardware didn't change. This website was last updated in 2004, which is nearly, or not nearly, it is 20 years ago. So this is an ancient website and it's a mirror of this website. I'm going to link that in the video description. I think the file is also available from a couple of other sources, but it's all the same file that Christopher Lang created, I believe. So yeah, this is a replacement for Atari's CO25953 chip. So that is the eMMU, the original one. that the 130XE used in the initial incarnation. So yeah, let's fire up my TL866 EPROMer, which should be able to program the GALs. So firing up my programmer software, select the correct IC, 16V8, and we have, I think, lattice 16V8 here. Yeah, lattice 16V8, and it's a D. Yeah, that should be the setting we need. Now we open the file. There we are. That's our file. And that's all, it's just the logic table basically. There's ones and zeros. Binary logic for you. So we put one of these in the programmer. By the way, these TL866s are kind of invaluable tools for the retro tinkerer. Used this so many times. These can write all kinds of GALs, really. And they can also program EPROMs, of course, and one-time programmable ROMs and everything, basically. So let's see. These should be electrically erasable, so we can probably program code memory log bit. Don't have to set the log bit, I guess. Erasing and programming code memory. Yeah, programming successful. So in theory, this should now be our eMMU chip, or at least a stand-in for that. Let's check. So putting the GAL into the socket, which it should fit perfectly in. On the 130XE, the later versions, this is a smaller chip actually, so if you get an original eMMU chip, you have to put it to the left. You have to align it to the first pin on the socket. So this should now be, if everything goes according to plan, a 130XE. As easy as that, in my case, because I already socketed everything and things like that. Okay, let's see if this still turns on at all. Fingers crossed. Hopefully. Okay. That's promising. We at least get the ready prompt. Okay, it still works as a 65XE it seems, and maybe even as a 130XE. We're going to run some tests. So I have hooked up my DecentXE keyboard. Should be able to just type by and get into the self-test. And we can, in theory, start the memory test. I think this only tests the first 64K of memory, but at least this should give us some indication of whether this machine still works at all at this point. And then we're going to run a better RAM test afterwards that tests the extended RAM. Yeah, this takes quite a while. Don't even think this is a very in-depth RAM test, but it takes a while. This is the second cycle, so the RAM test passed. Everything's green. That's good, I guess. We can reset to exit. So I fired up the extended RAM test by Satantronic again, and indeed it says we have 64 kilobytes of expanded RAM, so on top of the original 64 kilobytes. Banks 3 and 2, we can test all. Let's see if we get this to work. So 0 means 0 errors, I think, and it should flash green in the end, I hope. Yay, it flashed green. So we have indeed made a 130XE, according to this test. Let's run some other tests to be sure. Oh, there we go. Conventional RAM, 62 kilobytes. 130XE banked RAM, 64 kilobytes. Total RAM, 126 kilobytes. So that should be the same reading as on a real 130XE. We should probably run some software that's 128K only to verify that. Let's see. So this is Eagle Wing. That's allegedly a 130XE game. Enjoy. Oh, that's the card game. Okay, that's pretty boring. Let's see if we can have any nicer game here. But that's running, that's a good sign, I guess. Gato, that's a 130XE game as well. And I don't even have a joystick connected, so probably we're going to have to connect a joystick here. I'm going to connect the joystick and figure out some better game to show you. But this is very promising. The 130XE games are at least starting up. So here's a tower toppler game that supposedly only works on the 130XE. Oh, that looks like Nebulous. Yeah, that's Nebulous. That's a 130XE game there. So yeah, this works fine. So we have a 130XE. It actually feels like kind of a relief. Yeah, I'm actually quite relieved that at least I got some mods to work in this Atari. It seems the Atari runs fine after all, so it's just the 320K expansion that doesn't work in this particular one for whatever reason. As I said repeatedly, I didn't figure it out and I don't plan to, because it just takes too much time with too little reward, I guess. But this is now officially a 130XE and I'm pretty happy that I at least got that working. There's not too many games that target the 130XE specifically. There are some games that make use of the extra RAM, so it doesn't hurt to have that in there. Maybe this is helpful to someone out there, and I'm going to put more work into this and put a modern memory expansion in this on top of the 130XE expansion we just did. Yeah, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your subscriptions and your thumbs and your comments. If you know of any good Atari XE games that only run with 128K, let me know in the comments and I'm going to check them out. Special thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon or the YouTube channel memberships page or on Ko-fi. The links to that are in the video description and your support is of course highly appreciated. Hope to see you again on this channel sometime. I'm Jan Beta. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye! Ouch.